All right. Well, I think we're recording. So I'm going to post this conversation on our Facebook page. So appreciate everybody joining. I'm Ryan, and this is our Answer Media Space Mob happy hour to talk about connecting the dots with connected TV and OTT and everything else in between. I'm Ryan, and I am the Chief Product Officer at Answer Media, and I'm joined by three distinguished guests. Got Matt Brummett, who is our Chief Revenue Officer. He's all things connected TV and platforms and tech and monetization. I've got Danielle Barasa, who is our VP of Partnerships. She is into biz dev and CTV and video and programmatic and all of that. And Eric Keith is the president of our film studio, Space Mob Studios. So how's everybody doing today? What are we drinking?
Good.
Doing great. Got a beer.
You got a beer? It's 3 o'clock Central on a Friday. It's a nice time to do a happy hour.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to apologize to all of our guests that were sitting on Answer Media's Facebook page. We were going to try to do this live, but for some reason, I'm not smart enough to figure out the connector between Zoom and Facebook Live. But we'll get that problem figured out later. So anyway, the goal today is to dig into CTV and OTT and what that is and what it means for your brand. So I'm just going to fire away with some questions here and let these experts do the hard work. So why don't you guys give us an overview of CTV and OTT and what it is and what it means?
Who wants to take it off?
Yeah, Matt, you take that one. Let's hear it.
So what is CTTO TV? So it's all the content on Roku, Amazon, Apple TV, PlayStations, Xboxes. So all of the content that people are consuming and watching, that would be considered OTT media and connected TV. So it's one of the largest one of the largest mediums right now that people are consuming, especially during these times, and encapsulates. If people have subscriptions to Hulu, Netflix, obviously, Pluto TV, Tubi TV, obviously your HBO Goes or HBO Nows, all of those, that would fit this space that we're talking about today.
And CTV and OTT, like these terms are kind of used synonymously, correct? I mean, those two terms are, the space is sort of figuring out what it wants to call itself, if you will. Is that accurate?
Yes, I think CTV, connected TV, is more specifically the devices. So like a Roku device, an Apple TV device, the PlayStation, an Xbox, Amazon Fire TV, or what the dongles. And then OTT is technically the media that people are consuming on there. So the Hulu, the Netflix, the Plutos,
Yep.
That's kind of how it's, broken out.
That makes sense. So this space is growing fast. I mean, we were just talking about this. We've read different, projections for, how big this space is and how fast it's growing. Some of the stats we see are that this is in 2023 going to be a $50 billion business in 3 years from now. It's growing rapidly. There's something like 70% of households have streaming. So all of the TV dollars and TV ad spend eventually is going to be here. And so, as a digital media company, Answer Media, we have, basically three businesses, right? We have this programmatic video business. We have an agency that helps brands buy media across this ecosystem and build technology to interact in it. And then we have a film studio to help people create content for this space. And it's really complicated, and we get questions all the time from all three of our different businesses. I'm curious, Danielle, what's your take on, the web publishers that we work with or the brands that we work with? What are their biggest questions or challenges, or what were they asking you about when you're out talking to them about how they can leverage this space or get into it?
I think the biggest thing with publishers is they don't necessarily know where to start. I think historically, they know their web audiences very well. They've invested a lot in written content and targeting them that way. And so they look at it like, maybe some of them have video content. Maybe some of them don't. Maybe some of them have video content that was, it was created for web. It might be shorter form. So it's, can their current content be converted to TV quality content? Or maybe, do they need to really organize a whole internal production team and studio to develop content that would work for their audience? I think that's a big place where, there's a lot of question up front. Well, we're just not set up for that. I think, beyond that, it goes into the technology. What does it cost to invest in it up front? Who would do it? Would they do it internally? Would they use, a current product out there in the market? Maybe they'd outsource somebody to build something for them. And there's just a lot of questions around everything, the supporting of it, the cost behind it, and really how to drive their audience to a new medium.
Yep. Yeah. So if I'm if I'm just making an example here, if I'm ESPN and I have I've got a website with a bunch of traffic about sports, but I want to convert that audience to video, then I've got to ask myself all these questions like, do I need to build an app for Roku? Do I need to build an app for Amazon Fire, Android? And all those things are different. And how do I navigate that conversation? The technology behind it's one thing, but creating the content is another thing. So I'm curious, Matt, on your end, do you hear, on the technology side of things, that what are the hurdles that people are struggling with when it comes to questions around which platform should I go with, and how do I make some of those decisions?
Well, I kind of piggybacks on what Danielle's saying. I think there's just a lot of questions. A lot of people don't know, right? Do you go to Roku and just create a channel and upload some video content and that's it? I think there's a lot more moving pieces than people realize. Example, hosting the videos, and then having some sort of process for uploading the videos to Roku. And you also have to have titles of the videos. You have to have descriptions of the videos. You have to have meta tags. You have to have images. You have to have not only one image, but you have to have several sizes of images so that the channels can be displayed appropriately on Roku. So there's a lot of different moving pieces. I think piggyback exactly what Danielle's saying is that people just don't know where to start.
And if they wanted, like, let's say I want to make an app for, Roku. Let's say that's the biggest one, right? You got Roku, Amazon, Apple, Android, and then kind of this, Xbox and PlayStations, right? If I want to make an app for Roku, I got to go to Roku. I got to download an SDK. I got to hire a software developer. I've got to, build all that out, maintain it, host the files. It can be really challenging. And then once you get it set up, then the big $1 million question is, okay, what content? And that's where, Eric, I want to get you to chime in here. Like when you talk to, Space Mob, you guys have done films, you've done short films, you've done, ad creatives, every kind of video that you can think of. What's the biggest challenge you find when you're talking to a creator? Maybe somebody that's got a YouTube channel, and they want to get into this space. What questions are you hearing?
Well, I think a lot of people just don't know how to enter the space. I think, the biggest question is, my stuff is on YouTube. I'm getting a decent amount of followers. Where else can I take it? And a lot of them haven't even thought about moving over to, the sort of Roku OTT type experience. And so, that's kind of where we've seen the opportunity, like you mentioned, we are content creators as Answer Media and as Space Mob. We've done feature films, we've had stuff on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, on all the different streaming channels. We've created television commercials, all types of content that can be done. So when we're talking to content creators, we're sort of opening their eyes and saying, hey, your content is of value, and we can work with you to help syndicate that content out through our Answer Media network. And so, to answer your question, I think the biggest question is, what is the opportunity? How much money could they potentially make? And are we in some way going to disturb what they're currently doing on YouTube? If they've got a successful YouTube channel, are we going to somehow pirate that opportunity? And, the answer that I always give is, with the CPMs being, north of $14 on their content on OTT channels, you're not going to come close to that on YouTube. So of course you'd rather have the traffic on OTT than you would on YouTube.
Yeah, that leads into another topic I wanted to get into is you mentioned CPM. So as a content creator, I got two ways to make money, right? I can either monetize that content with ads, or I can charge subscriptions, right? And so the CPMs in the connected TV space are higher. Matt, can you talk a little bit about that and what that means for people that are creating content in this space, and how they should be thinking about moving their content from the web to CTV?
So ad CPMs typically range between $15 to $30. Obviously, you can get higher than that on more specific ad buys, but generally, as an effective CPM that someone should see, that range is pretty accurate. It's a big range, but that means there's a lot of opportunity there to capture revenue for yourself.
Right.
And really, it's about how many people can I get coming back to my channel? How can I activate my existing audience? How can I take my people who are on YouTube, maybe watching my content on their phone, or while they're waiting in line at the doctor's office or whatever? How do I activate them and get them to come to my channels at night when they're sitting on their couch and maybe they don't want to watch YouTube, they want a more traditional TV experience? How do I activate my audience and get them there? Because the CPMs definitely support the opportunity. And so really that's the question that we like to pose to our customers who want to create their own channels or have questions about it, is can you activate your audience? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. And if you have a website or a YouTube channel or whatever, if you're able to effectively do that, then you're going to have a lot of success, in this OTT space.
Yep. So what about brands, right? So brands like, well, actually, before I get into that, another question. So what about the creator, like the YouTube creator, or say I'm a comedian and I have a YouTube channel, and I have a bunch of 10 to 12 minute clips on YouTube, a bunch of subscribers on YouTube, and I don't necessarily need my own channel on Roku or Amazon Fire, and it may be a bigger leap for me to build a channel and then go and try to get people to download and install that channel on Roku. But what I could do is package my content differently and then distribute it to other CTV channel owners. Can you talk a little bit about that, Eric, and some of the projects that you guys have done in and around that?
Yeah, comedians are one group, and short filmmakers would be a group. Independent filmmakers in general would be kind of another group. Sketch comedy troupes. No matter what kind of content you have, like if you put together a nice batch of content, let's say you have 20 episodes of something, or 10 episodes of something, or whatever that number is. Syndicating it out across the OTT network with Answer Media or with any group is just sort of additional revenue that you can make off of your content. We talked to a group recently that had a really successful YouTube series, and they were getting ready to launch their third season of the YouTube series. And we thought syndicating the first two seasons might be a great way to kind of promote the third season. So one of the problems that we're addressing by syndicating content across OTT is not only generating revenue for our partners, but also generating reach and publicity. Yeah. I mean, think of how many, we talked to, a group that has a YouTube page last night, and, think of how many people, when they put their hours and hours of content out through our network, how many more people will be exposed to their content. So that's hopefully an answer to your question.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a good segue into the question I was going to ask before that is around, brands and I come at this from the angle of I've been running an agency for the last, 5 or 6 years. And before that was running my own brand. And, I think about for the brand that I was running, would it have made sense for us to make a CTV channel? Probably not so much, but packaging content around what we were doing and syndicating it onto relevant CTV channels could have been really interesting. So, as an agency owner, we work with a lot of, primarily B2B brands whose businesses revolve around a sales organization, or B2C e-commerce companies, and also B2B e-commerce companies. But for both of those niches, the opportunity to create content and sort of build your brand and tell your story is really interesting. I wonder if you can talk about, that angle a little bit, and maybe how a brand would think about CTV differently than a content publisher like a newspaper or a blog or something along those lines.
I mean, I can get started and then the others can kind of dive in if that's cool. Like I saw a stat recently, and sadly I don't have the source, but I heard that there's basically only around 200 brands that have their own CTV channels, despite the fact that 70% of the households are streaming, using streaming devices. So any brand that's sort of doing it now is an early adopter. And they're having to come up with creative ways to engage their audience through essentially television programming. It's not, short form doesn't seem to work very well unless it's packaged specifically for the OTT audience. But, we've talked about dozens of brands, Ryan, around the office. But you can come up with clever ways to engage your audience by creating original television programming, whether it's a narrative style show, a game show, man on the street interviews, or going to an event, and nobody's going to any events right now, but go to an event and interview people in the parking lot or whatever. There's a million ideas, and obviously we'd be happy to pitch any brand 20 ideas tomorrow if the opportunity arose. But I think connecting with your audience in sort of a different way, you see CTV as a different opportunity to connect with your users.
And not only connect, but engage them in a way that makes them keep coming back to you. Yeah. Right? Is because if you're talking about a brand, the holy grail is loyalty, right? You want them to keep coming back. And so rather than showing them ads that they might remember when they go to the grocery store or something, or when they're looking for something to do, they might remember your brand and they might never come back again or never purchase that product again. But if you're doing what Eric is talking about and actually viewing yourself as a media company that engages an audience with the purpose of having them come back and show you loyalty that way, I think that opens up a lot of opportunities for brands to engage their audiences in a much different way, and potentially a stronger way than just showing them advertisements.
Yeah, I think two great points you made there. The first is that every brand should be thinking like a media company, right? Like the barrier to to create content and get it distributed now is way different than it was 20 years ago. I mean, it used to be to get content on television was like, a way bigger production than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I thought was interesting about what you said is, the brand should think about CTV differently than a content creator, because it really all comes down to the marketing goal. Like, what are you trying to get happen? And I always think about, you guys have heard me talk about this, The Office, the startup metrics for Pirates, the acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, referral. Where in that funnel is your content designed to work, right? So are you trying to build, top of funnel content to educate your audience about the problem that your product solves? Or are you trying to monetize your content with subscriptions? And this is a hypothesis. I could be way off here, but Brahms, you and I were talking about this earlier, that most of the e-commerce brands and B2B brands, I think they have a big opportunity with CTV and syndicating their content into that world, that, to create top of funnel awareness content and but not get too hung up on, is this content driving, conversions? I think the event that you want to optimize for when you're looking at CTV, syndication, or even CTV media buys, which is a whole different bag. But activation, right? Can you build an audience, convince your audience that you know what you're talking about around whatever your service is? Like if I'm a health a health club, then creating content all around exercising and healthy living and eating and diet and exercise and all that kind of stuff is exactly what I would be doing if I owned a health studio. Clearly I don't, but at the end of the day, the top of funnel awareness content is a huge opportunity there.
Rather
CTV
than, like, for example, to take the health club instance, rather than just be a place where people go work out, is you're becoming a resource for your customers to come to get advice, to get direction on things that are going to help them when they come into the gym and work out, right? And so it's engaging your audience on a whole other level that typical advertising doesn't allow you to do.
You're establishing an emotional connection. There's a sense of loyalty there. There's a relationship. There's community.
Yeah.
And so that allows a brand, I think, to do more of that than just the typical selling aspect. They're creating branded content for all these partners, and really this is about them creating content around who they are as a brand.
Yeah, it's like the teach, don't sell, is the sort of mentality that I like to subscribe to. Like, don't sell to your audience, teach them, and they'll come back and buy, Hey, Eric, something you said kind of jumped out too. You said something along the lines of, I think you said 200 brands. I'd love to dig into that a little bit about, how many brands are actually using CTV right now and leveraging it. But you guys probably have all heard of Gary Vaynerchuk, and if you follow him, he talks a lot about how, if you had the opportunity to dive into Facebook as a creator or an advertiser in 2010, would you do it? Yes or no? Obviously, the answer is yes. This is where it's going, and like right now is the opportunity. Everybody who thought Facebook was not going to be a thing 10 years ago is now paying $15 CPMs to advertise there, when 10 years ago you could advertise there for $1 CPM.
Mm-hmm.
So the content creation and getting into this ecosystem now, even if you think your brand might not be ready, I would highly encourage, experimentation and finding a small little niche of your brand that you can, create or tell a story on CTV and see what happens. Well, guys, that was a really good discussion. What else did I miss? Unfortunately, we didn't have any questions from our audience because we were unable to go live. But what else is out there? What else people need to be thinking about?
I mean, I think the content of it, the content aspect to me is the most important, right? Because if it's not good, people aren't going to watch it. People aren't going to engage with it. I mean, it's not just about, having your front, if you're a business owner, or let's say you're the chief marketing officer of a brand, the editorial director of a publisher, right? It's not just about putting a phone in front of your face and talking and making content. It's really telling a story is what it's about. And I think that's one of the things that Eric and his team are so good at, is because they've been doing it for years with movies and stuff, is telling a story. And that's how you captivate an audience. And like what Danielle said, it's connecting with them on an emotional level. And I think that requires really good content to do that. And to me, I just think that's, at the end of the day, we can talk about, monetization and distribution and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if you're not connecting with your audience at an emotional level, if you're a publisher or a brand, then you're not going to have success. And so I think at the end of the day, the content is the key. And
I think that's an interesting point. I also think it's a fine line. This is something we could have a whole other episode on this topic alone, but like the line between how good does my content have to be between should I just get started is a really, really thin one. And I agree with you 100%. Like the content's got to be good or nobody's going to watch it. But, the flip side of that is as an agency owner for the last 6 years, I've listened to brands. I've seen a couple brands really do some interesting content and get into it and get good and like start and get better as they go. I've also seen a few brands, I don't even know what the right word is, overthink it or figure, think about, well, it's got to be perfect. And this is, they overproduce it. And so I definitely think there's a fine line there. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but I definitely think that the content for CTV and OTT has got to be well produced. And I think that's what Eric and his team, bring to the table. I would encourage anybody that's thinking about creating content, not to throw in kind of a shameless plug here, but, you can create raw content and just do it on the fly and then send it off to a rock star producer and have them make it into beautifully produced episodic storytelling content. And we have a product that does that. It's simply a monthly SaaS fee. You pay us a monthly fee. You create the content. We make it beautiful. It's called Video Mosh. So go to videomosh.com if you're interested in looking at that. But the point I'm trying to make is that you got to get started if you want to get in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add to that. There's sort of 2 points I'd like to make to close out from my perspective. One, the barrier to entry is actually pretty low. Like, you don't have to spend a ton of money to make great content. You just have to have a good angle and a good story. It's all about storytelling. And it could be a podcast. It could be something as simple as what we're doing. I mean, not that this is, riveting television, but if you have the right topic for your brand, you can do it. And the second point is you don't have to have your own OTT channels in order to produce that content. So if you're a brand or you're a publisher and you want to get into this world, you may have content, you may not, but you can create content or take existing content and put it through a syndication play like we're offering. Again, not to hit the shameless plug, but through Answer Media, you can distribute your content.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. I think.
Going back to just publishers where you're questioning, if you have the content, if you can get into it, where, like I said before, they know their audience, they have so much written content, they essentially have scripts. They know what their audience is really receptive to. They know what they love to hear about. So they can take that written content and that is the basis for what they could be developing. Mm-hmm. And they can start right based off of that and see how receptive their audience is to it. I think it's important to know that even though they may not have, solid video content, they have everything they need to get started.
I think that's a great point. You can take other content and repurpose it for this medium.
That's right.
Well, guys, that was awesome. I really appreciate the conversation, and I'm glad you guys were able to join on a Friday. And I apologize to our viewers that were waiting to hear it live, but they'll get to see it an hour late. So we'll try to do this more regularly. If you have questions, comments, or any additional thoughts, post them above or below or to the side or wherever it is, and we'll address them in the next live once we figure that out. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you
Bye-bye.
later.